Eternamente strapping the system.
Hey, it's Chris from Poseidon here. I'm going to do an overview and review on F1 foils. So we're going to look at 4 foils here. F1 have a really extensive range of foils which stretches much further than this, down to the really early lift in gravity, the Phantom which lifts early, and then through this range down to the Escape, which is very playful and very performance focused for high-end riding and kite foiling. What we're going to take a look at today is the 4 most popular foils in their range, which are probably the most versatile, the most user-friendly foils for the widest range of riders, which is the 7 Seas V2, the Eagle, the Skate, and the Eagle X. So these kind of cover the majority of riders and what they're looking for out of foiling. What you can be confident in knowing when you jump on these foils is that they've got a very familiar feeling and an F1 feeling as you jump between them. So kind of 2 or 3 things that stand out with F1 and which is consistent through the range. Firstly, how stiff the connection and the feel feels with these. So that stands out straight away. Secondly, in all of these foils, how well they handle their top end. So this is the characteristics that all F1 foils have got. And all foils across the range have a speed range of how they work. As they reach that upper limit, foils behave differently. Some foils can suddenly pitch down, some foils can suddenly buck up. And one thing which is consistent across all F1 foils is that in that upper limit where you reach its top point, they behave themselves. Nothing suddenly unpredictable happens. And whichever foil you're riding, it kind of progressively builds up and then is manageable at its top end. So you know that with all of these. The other thing is how loose the roll is. And this is an F1 characteristic they carry on through, is they're very playful and very fun in their roll to make them all a joy to ride and a real kind of pleasure to throw them around. So that's going to be consistent all the way through. What these 4 kind of key foils are, they make up, is specific riding styles and characteristics depending on who you are, what you do, and what conditions you ride in. So probably the most easy foil to use, the 7 Seas. So this is the V2, comes in 3 different sizes. This is the lowest aspect ratio of these 4 foils. It's got the fattest section and it's designed to lift the easiest. So the 7 Seas is a foil which makes getting up and going very, very easy. It's got a very wide range with a comfortable top end and still a very loose roll. So this is a foil which is designed to make it easy to progress. So if you've got other skills that you're coming into foiling with, you might consider it your first foil, but it's generally considered your sort of step down foil, your next foil, which you might go for after on the F1 system coming in on the Gravity or the Phantom, say. The 7 Seas has a faster feel. It's got a wider speed range. Its standout characteristic in the range for me is how well that bottom end behaves. So it lifts up very, very easily. But then as you slow down and you come to its bottom end, whereas other foils might be a bit more abrupt and have a stall speed that just drops, the 7 Seas doesn't do that. It's very, very forgiving and you feel what's going on so you can recover mistakes, which makes this a very good foil if you're trying to push your level on to the next thing. So if you're pushing your winging on, or you're changing discipline, you're coming over to prone, or you're going on to downwinding, and you're looking for something which is going to get you up and going easy, but also you're not going to get bored of particularly quick, that's where the 7 Seas comes in. It's real fun to ride. Its limitations are in its speed and its playfulness. At a certain point, you'll feel like you want a little bit more, but the 7 Seas, you're not going to get there quickly. It's always going to have a place in the quiver that's just going to get you out and it's going to get you progressing quickly. The Eagle is a higher aspect ratio foil, slightly more span to it per size. And this is designed for having more efficiency and more speed. So it has a slightly abrupt stall speed at the bottom, which the 7 Seas doesn't have. So you need to have the skills to be able to get above that stall speed and keep it up there. But its speed range is very, very wide and it goes faster than, say, the 7 Seas. So this is something that you're going to progress onto. Once you've got your basic skills down and you're looking for more efficiency, the Eagle is really fun to ride because it's so efficient. Winging, it's fast. You can glide around and you can have lots of fun with it. Downwinding, it's going to be a really good next step to move you on. And from a prone perspective, the wide speed range makes this a really fun foil to use. Its bottom end, whilst it does have a small stall speed which is a little bit more abrupt than 7 Seas, it's a very predictable stall speed, which is still fairly low, which means as you come down to it, as long as you're aware it's there, you can keep it going and you can pull the speed back up very, very easy, which makes the Eagle a very good foil for prone because you can pump around with it very easy. It's powerful per size and you can connect around very good, but still have that playful nature. It is quite spanny and it does create a lot of lift, which means that if you push a hard turn through it, it does create a lot of energy, which pushes up through your legs, and it's going to make it a little bit less forgiving to taking drops. So it's not so playful as maybe some of the other foils, but across the board, it's got a very wide range. It pumps very easy and it's very fast. The Skate enters the program of making some sacrifices in its bottom end. So a slightly more abrupt stall speed, slightly higher than the Eagle, but with a characteristic which is super, super playful. So the roll on this is probably the loosest roll of any foils on the market, and it makes it really fun to charge around in the waves. Flat water, it's super fun too. You can throw it about, but where it excels is when you take it onto a wave face. And that's not just because it rolls really loose and it's really fun, but also the way its power and its speed behaves through its turn. So whereas some foils might load up and increase power as you push through the turn, and some might decrease, what the Escape does is it carries a very consistent lift and power and speed all the way into its turn, through its turn, and then out of the turn, which is why people rave about the Skate, because it means you can push your turns and push your riding level on a wave face much harder because you know it doesn't do anything unpredictable. You can really confidently push in knowing nothing's going to change as you go through and you're coming out of it composed. So it's a super fun foil to use. It needs a bit more speed because it is a bit more abrupt in its stall speed. At its lower end speed band, it can be quite pitch sensitive. So if you pitch it up too much, if you're pumping and you pump too hard, it can stall it out quite quickly. So it's not the easiest foil to pump. So for prone, you'll want to have some skills that you are quite efficient in your pumping. For downwind, it's probably not going to be the foil you're going to go for. But for winging, it's a dream as long as you can create speed. And for prone, so long as you can pump, it's super fun with that compromise at the bottom end. The Eagle X. The Eagle X is again a performance-focused foil, but performance this time in efficiency and speed. So this foil is super, super fast. It's so efficient through the water, it just wants to drive forwards. It creates a lot of power per size, and it's very, very efficient and very, very fast, which makes it really exciting to ride, the Eagle X. It wants to drive forwards, and if you're downwinding, it's the foil that you'll aspire to ride because you can jump forwards onto the next bump ahead. If you're prone, it pumps dreamy as long as you've got your speed above its stall speed. It's got the most abrupt stall speed in all of the foils in the F1 range because of that high aspect ratio nature to it, which means you need to be keeping it up and above that stall speed. So to prone it, you'll need to have a good level. You'll need to have fairly good conditions to create that speed. As long as you've got that, you can pump it for days and be connecting for days. Winging, it is, again, that speed makes it super fast and fun to ride. So if you're into blasting around really fast, doing wing downwinders, blasting across the lake, racing your mates, that's what this is for. It compromises bottom end. It also compromises not playfulness in its roll, but characteristics, in that as you push it through its turn, all of that span is creating a lot of lift, which means that it is harder to handle through a sharper turn, which makes it less friendly to wave riding and more about blasting around is what she's designed for. So what F1 have got here is something in their range, which is even wider the range, but something between these four, which has kind of got something for everybody and everybody can appreciate. Some of the foils like the Eagle X is very specifically focused on performance. If you're looking for that, that's where you're going to head. If you're not looking for that, you're going to write that off if you're making your choice on which one to get. The 7Cs, a real dream if you're looking to progress yourself on. You'd never regret buying one and putting one in your quiver because it's always going to have a place. And even when you do grow out of it because you look for more performance, it's a session saver and it's a foil you'll pull out the bag if you cross discipline into a different sport, which is where this is so good if you're pushing yourself on. Between the Skate and the Eagle, ultimately you've got two very similar foils to look at. At first feel when you ride them, they're two very similar foils to ride. But the character differences here is that the Eagle has a slightly wider speed range, which pumps very, very well in its bottom end, but doesn't roll quite so loose. Whereas the Skate, not quite so forgiving in its bottom end, but has the most incredibly playful roll when you're on the wave and you're pushing it through. So something there for everyone. Definitely worth considering playing around with what tails you put on there as well as your quiver building. Generally now, F1 tails are monoblocks, so the tails is fused into the fuselage. They break their range down in simple terms into a downwind tail, which is flat and high aspect ratio, and a carved tail, which is more curved, slightly low aspect ratio. The carved tail looser on its roll, the downwind tail a bit more locked in and a bit more efficient. So you can use those characteristics to bring out the best or to make up for lack in the foils. The longer fuselage, would highly recommend checking them out as well, especially if you're going for the slightly more pitch sensitive foils. And I guess they're not pitch sensitive, but slightly less forgiving foils on their pitch. If you're stamping quite hard on the back through a turn at slower speed or trying to pump them at slower speed, it can stall quite easy. So by having a longer fuselage makes it more forgiving into your weight motions. So definitely worth checking them out. So all the F1 foils are real fun to ride, got a real familiar characteristics as you jump through them. Check them out. Give us a shout if you want more info. Give us a shout if you want to try one of your own or you want to get your own. I'm Chris and we're Poseidon-watersports.com.
Government is trapping the system.